Deep in the dark forests of the old world, lumbering from wooded hollows and rampaging from suspicious bushes, the beastmen of the old world are the corrupted wilds, come to claim the lands for the dark gods. Half man, half beast, twisted by eldritch energy, and huge monsters that can only be the stuff of nightmares make up the lumbering hordes of the Beastmen force. Hello, I'm Rob, and welcome to this Beastmen army overview. The Beastmen have the opportunity for a very unique playstyle. Opportunity to ambush lots of different units, as well as bringing forth loads of giant monsters. It's primarily a lightly armoured melee army. This doesn't mean there aren't some absolutely solid frontline units, and it might comfortably be one of the widest army books. Lots of opportunities for chaff units, big melee bricks, and ambushing is going to be a real nightmare to play against. Couple this with the ability to generate frenzy through the army and some absolutely awesome monsters. The Beastmen army roster is incredibly fun, and I can't wait to talk about it. So let's dive straight in and let's look at the army roster. For characters, you can have up to one Beastlord, Great Bray-Shaman, or Doombull for every 1,000 points. And you can have multiple Wargors, Bray-Shamans, Gorebulls, and Centigor chieftains. For core, you must have one unit of Goreherd, and you can have multiple units of Ungor herds, Chaos Warhounds, Razorgor herds, and Tuskgor Chariots. If your general is a Beastlord or a Wargor, one Bestigor herd unit may be taken as a core choice. If your general is a Doombull or a Gorebull, you can have one Minotaur herd taken as a core choice. In the special section, you can have multiple units of Bestigor herd, Harpies, Minotaur herds, Centigor herds, Dragon Ogres, Razorgor Chariots, and Cockatrices. You can take multiple units of Chaos Ogres from the Warriors of Chaos list. If your general is a Great Bray-Shaman or a Bray-Shaman, you can have one Jabberslythe or Cygor taken as a special choice. If your general is a Doombull or a Gorebull, then you can have up to one Gorgon taken as a special choice. For rare, you can have multiple Dragon Ogre Shaggoths, Jabberslythes, Cygors, Gorgons, and Chaos Giants. You can also take multiple units of Chaos Trolls and Chaos Spawn. Their unit profiles are in the Warriors of Chaos army list. If you'd like to have a Battle Standard Bearer in your army, then a single Wargor can be upgraded to a Battle Standard Bearer for 25 points. I think it's clear looking through the army roster that who you pick to be your general is going to be pretty impactful on the army construction. Being able to have either Bestigor or Minotaurs as your core choices is really nice, and being able to fit additional Gorgons, Jabberslythes, and Cygors in your army because they're able to be taken out of special is going to mean choosing who your general is going to be is very important, but it does mean you're going to be able to produce a fantastic theme for the Beastmen roster. Let's take a look at the army special rules. These special rules are additional rules that apply to special units in your army and are unique to the Beastmen roster. The first special rule is Primal Fury. When this unit is chosen in the combat phase, it must take a leadership test, and if the test is passed, the unit becomes subject to Primal Fury until the end of the combat phase. This allows you to reroll any natural hits of a 1. This interacts with the special rule Foe Render. While subject to Primal Fury, a hand weapon carried by a model with this special rule has armor-piercing characteristic of -2, which is brilliant. Primal Fury also interacts with Blood Rage. The way Blood Rage works is when you're rolling to test to see if you get Primal Fury, if you roll a double, then that unit gains Frenzy. Even if they had Frenzy earlier in the game and they lost Frenzy, they're still going to get Frenzy. Frenzy interacts with the special rule Blood Greed. If the unit has the special rule Blood Greed and is frenzied, instead of adding +1 attacks to its attack characteristic, it adds +2. It's crazy. However, there is a negative. When rolling to see if you can pursue an enemy, instead of rolling 2d6, you can only roll 1d6. Let's take a moment to just recap exactly what's going to happen with Primal Fury. We're going to do a leadership test when we get into melee combat. If we pass it, then we're going to be able to reroll ones to hit. If we're equipped with a hand weapon and we have the special rule Foe Render, we're going to have AP2. If we roll a double when we're testing for our primal test, then we're going to gain Frenzy. And if we have the Blood Greed rule, instead of only having +1 attack for Frenzy, we're going to gain +2. That is such a chain of events spiraling off the Primal Fury test, which is super fun and really thematic. Some units have the Ensorcelled Weapon special rule, where the hand weapons are magical attacks and have AP1. If you upgrade to having 2 hand weapons or change to having a great weapon, then this rule will go away. Also, it doesn't apply to magical weapons and things like that. Some units in the Beastmen roster will have the Mark of Chaos Undivided. Units with the Mark of Chaos Undivided are going to be able to reroll failed Panic, Fear, and Terror tests. I've been talking about this a lot in these videos, but I actually think those 3 status effects are going to be massive in the game, and so being able to reroll them is a great boon. Moving on to some special rules which are really going to affect certain units, we have Bulgors. Impact hits caused by units with this special rule have an AP value of 1. Some units, Centigors, have the Drunken special rule. At the start of the turn, you roll a dice for each one of your drunken units on the table that isn't frenzied or fleeing, and that's not engaged in combat. On a roll of a 1, the unit becomes unsteady. Until the start of the next start of turn subphase, the unit becomes subject to the Random Movement special rule, and its movement becomes D6 +2. On a roll to 2 to 5, the result is Sobering Up, and the alcohol has no effect, which is not how sobering up works. And on a roll of a 6, they become belligerent drunks. Until the start of the next turn subphase, the unit is subject to Frenzy, and you can gain Frenzy even if you lost Frenzy earlier in the game. Some units will have the Razor Tusks special rule. During a turn in which it charged, the armor-piercing characteristic of a Tuskgor or Razorgor's tusks are improved by 1. Some of the characters are going to have the Gaze of the Gods special rule. During the command subphase, a character with this special rule may choose to roll on the Gaze of the Gods table. On a result of a 1, the unit becomes damned by chaos. The unit becomes subject to stupidity for the rest of the battle, and if they already have that special rule, they suffer a -1 to their leadership to a minimum of 2. On a roll of a 2, you get unnatural quickness. Until the next start of turn subphase, this model gains +1 modifier to their initiative characteristic. On a roll of a 3, they get Iron Skin. Until the next start of turn subphase, the model gains +1 modifier to their toughness characteristic. On a roll of a 4, they get a Murderous Mutation. For the remainder of the game, the model gains +1 modifier to their weapon skill characteristic. On a roll of a 5, they gain Dark Fury. They gain +1 modifier to their attacks characteristic. And on a roll of a 6, they gain Apotheosis. For the remainder of the game, the model gains +1 modifier to their strength and leadership characteristic. Of all of those, I would love the +1 attack result, especially being able to couple this with Primal Fury, Frenzy, and getting +2 attacks already. We can kick out a load of attacks from a melee Chaos champion. Some units, mainly Dragon Ogres, have the special rule, the Quickening Storm. A model with this special rule has a 5+ ward save against any wound suffered that were caused by magic missile or magical vortexes. In addition, if any models with this special rule are hit by the spell Stormcall, which is on the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth's profile, they become quickened, where they gain +1 to their attacks and initiative until the start of your next turn. Another thing you can see from this list of special rules is that some units feel like they're part of the core army with Primal Fury, and then you have the additional things like Centigors and Dragon Ogres. This makes a wonderful cornucopia of different diverse units, and means you can really theme your army in the way that you want. Obviously, you can go much more Dragon Ogre heavy, or if you really want to commit, you can have loads and loads of Chaos Goats. For me, personally, it's all about an army of drunken centaur ladies, but that's just the army I want to build. Don't tell me how to have fun. While not an army special rule, I think it's worth noting that many of the units in this roster are able to be upgraded to having the Ambusher special rule. Not all of the units, many of the units like the monsters are not able to do so, but most of the goats and other sorts of characters are going to be able to be ambushing. This is going to create an incredibly unique gaming experience if you're playing with the Beast of Chaos or if you're playing against the Beast of Chaos. So let's just remind ourselves very quickly about how ambushing works. Instead of deploying units on the board as you start deploying your army, you can deploy them into reserve instead. From the beginning of round 2 onwards, you roll a dice at the start of each of your start of turn subphases. You roll for each unit, and on a roll of 1 to 3, the unit is delayed. And on a roll of a 4, the unit arrives, entering the battle as reinforcements during the compulsory move subphase. The unit may be placed on any edge of the battlefield, chosen by its controlling player, but cannot be placed within 8 inches of an enemy model. If any ambushers are held in reserve by the start of round 5, they arrive automatically. This means these units arriving from reserve are not going to be able to charge that turn. Also, they're going to be arrayed along the board edge. However, this is going to cause a massive problem for your opponent. And so when playing against the Beastmen, you're going to have to be really conscious about how you zone and control the board. And if you're playing as Beastmen, you're about to have the best time. A wizard with a Lore of Beast special rule is going to be able to gain access to one of the 3 spells from their spell lore. When generating spells, instead of choosing the signature spell, you can choose one of these spells instead. The first spell is Viletide. It's a magic missile with a casting value of 8 and a range of 15 inches. The target enemy unit suffers 5d6 strength 1 hits, with no armor saves permitted. However, you can still take ward saves and regen saves. Obviously, what an incredibly attractive thing to roll 5d6 hits. Wow. However, obviously, they're also strength 1, but if you could couple this with ways to reduce the toughness of an enemy unit, could get really interesting. The next spell, Devolve, is another magic missile. It's cast on an 8 with a range of 15 inches. The target enemy unit immediately must take a leadership test, and if the test is failed, it loses a number of wounds equal to the amount by which it failed the test. Very effective into units with low leadership, but I still just want to roll 5d6 attacks. The last spell is the Mantle of Gorok, which is an enhancement spell with a casting value of 8, and it's a self-cast. Until the end of this turn, the caster gains plus d6 to their strength and attacks characteristic to a maximum of 10. However, if a 6 is rolled, the modifier is lost and the caster instead loses a single wound. Say it with me. It's time for combat wizards. Let's start looking through the units in this roster, and let's start obviously with the characters. Worth noting that many of the characters can take chaos mutations, But like we have with all these other previous videos, we're going to take magic items and these chaos mutations into account in another video where we start talking about combos and other little tricks that you can put together for your Beastmen force. The first profile we're going to look at are the Beastmen Chieftains. This is your Beastlord or your Wargor. And don't forget, if either of these two are your general, you're going to be able to take a unit of Bestigor as a core choice in your army. The Beastlord has got an aggressive stat line. Strength and toughness 5, weapon skill 6 with 4 attacks. He's also going to be striking at initiative 5, so it's fair to say that this is a melee frontline character. The issue may well be survivability. A stock comes with no armor, but is able to be upgraded to have heavy armor and a shield. For special rules, the Beastmen Chieftains have access to Primal Fury, Foe Render, and Blood Rage. You're going to be potentially able to get +2 attacks, rerolling 1s to hit, and AP of 2 on the hand weapon. Has the Gaze of the Gods, so can consult the table to see if it's going to be able to get boons, all of which I would probably always be doing because you get so many bonuses, especially to melee. Mark of Chaos Undivided, so rerolling Panic, Fear, and Terror Test, and has access to a special rule called Brayhorn. This is an amazing rule if you're trying to build yourself an ambushing force. For the beginning of turn 2, this unit can take a leadership test. If they pass the test, then you're going to be able to re-roll for all of the ambushing units that have not yet arrived on the board. This is obviously excellent if what you're trying to do is develop an ambushing army. This makes ambushing that much more consistent. I think it's worth noting also that you should get special bonus points at an event if you do bring your own Brayhorn and sound it at the start of turn 2. You can upgrade the Beastmen Chieftain to also have the Ambusher special rule, and as well as obviously being able to take 50 points of Chaos Mutations, they can have 100 points of magic items. You can also mount the Beastlord on a Tuskgor Chariot or a Razorgor Chariot. The Wargor is the character that you're going to make your battle standard bearer. Thanks to the Mark of Chaos Undivided, you're going to get a lot of natural rerolls to Fear, Panic, and Terror tests. However, the Battle Standard Bearer is going to still be great for other tests that you might need to take during the game, so I think you're always probably also going to take a Wargor. You can make this go into a very solid combat character, and it's toughness 5, but can only be upgraded to having heavy armor and a shield. And so you're probably going to be spending magic points on giving them some better equipment to make them more survivable, because the Battle Standard Bearer is worth additional points to your opponent if they're able to run it down, and also is going to be a linchpin in your army. Our wizards in this army are known as Beastmen Shamans. You can have a great Bray-Shaman, who is like your Sorcerer Lord, starts out at level 3 and can be upgraded to a level 4 wizard. Our Bray-Shaman is obviously the cheaper version, starts out as a level 1 and can be upgraded to a level 2. Per 1,000 points, any of these two wizards can be upgraded to having the Ambusher special rule, or could be mounted on a Tuskgor Chariot or a Razorgor Chariot. Don't forget, chariots are particularly good for mounting wizards because they give you 360-degree arc of fire. Either of these two wizards have access to demonology, dark magic, or elementalism. And of course, they can trade a signature spell up for having one of the spell laws from the Lore of Beasts. For survivability, they're in the same boat as many of the other wizards in the game. No armor, although they do have the special rule, the Beastmen Braystaff. So if this wizard does end up in combat, they can either use the Beastmen Braystaff as a great weapon, and if not, it counts as a hand weapon, and it gives them a 5-up armor save. Of course, they have the Mark of Chaos Undivided, so they're going to be able to reroll those Fear, Panic, and Terror tests. And they have the Gaze of the Gods, so they're going to be able to consult the table. Although I'm not really sure I would do this, I really don't want my wizard to be stupid. I think it's fair to say that if you wanted to go for a lot of models on the board, then Beastmen is going to be a great way to do this. Therefore, these wizards are going to be able to add a lot to the economies of scale of the army. Buffing up some of those core units is going to be great. However, I think this army is going to be able to do a lot of damage at range or at places you're not really expecting. So I think magic missiles as well as magical vortexes, in conjunction with many of the other types of damage coming in from the Beastmen force, means that I think that you're going to have some very offensive wizards. If you would like a monstrous melee character, you need look no further than the Minotaur champions. The Lord level is a Doombull and the other is a Gorebull. The Doombull has got an incredible stat line. 5 wounds at toughness 5, it's effectively a mini monster. It comes as standard with no armor, but obviously you can upgrade it to have heavy armor and take a shield. As base, it comes equipped with a hand weapon, and you can upgrade it to take an additional hand weapon or a great weapon. However, that hand weapon will be AP 2 because it has the Foe Render special rule. 5 attacks base at strength 6 and weapon skill 6, meaning it's going to be hitting and wounding most things very effectively. However, 5 attacks is a bit of a lie because it has a special rule, Slaughterer's Call. And while this unit becomes frenzied, any unit it joins also becomes frenzied. Thanks to Primal Fury, you're most likely turning this unit into a frenzied unit, which means we could be getting up to 7 attacks at strength 6 and AP 2, and we haven't as of yet given them any upgrades. A Doombull can take 100 points worth of magic items and 50 points worth of chaos mutations. All of those attacks are also getting Armor Bane. They have impact hits, and their impact hits are at AP 1 thanks to the Bulgor special rule. And if all of that wasn't enough, They also can obviously consult the gaze of the gods, potentially getting them an additional attack or +1 strength, +1 initiative, and thankfully it's also got a fairly high initiative at initiative 5. So if this character is able to get a charge off, it's going to go all the way up to initiative 8, and it should strike first before anything else. And with its not too bad AP, should be able to punch through some pretty decent armor as well. I think this is going to be something I consistently say through this book, so I'll say it again. Survivability will be an issue. However, the payoff when this unit hits something is going to be incredible. The Gorebull is just a cheaper version. They drop a wound down to having 4 wounds, 1 less attack, 1 less weapon skill, and 1 less strength. I could honestly see multiple units of Gorebulls being used to just absolutely hammer combat resolution into certain units. However, again, probably we should mention that Frenzy is going to be a real issue for this army because you're going to get loads of attacks, which is great. This means your army is going to be fairly uncontrollable. It's also worth noting, if either of these 2 characters are your general, you could take a unit of Minotaur Herd as a core choice, and 1 Gorgon can be taken out of the special points allowance. If Drunken Goats are your flavour, then you can take yourself a Warhoof. This is a Centigor chieftain, and it's close as you're going to get to a mounted character in this force. A great melee profile, but survivability, as always, will be the issue here. 3 wounds on toughness 4, no armour as standard, but can be upgraded to having heavy armour and a shield. Can take Chaos Mutations up to 50 points and have 50 points worth of magic items. The reason I think you would take this character is because you put it inside a unit of Centigor Herd, a fast cavalry unit that can move through cover. The Centigor Chieftain is fairly cheap and can be able to provide a lot of additional combat resolution to the unit. Up to 1 of these per 1,000 points can also be an ambusher, so there's even the potential of making this a solo ambushing unit that's hunting war machines at the back of the board. And I think in that role, it will do an excellent job. And thanks to its high movement of 8 and swift stride, and as well as being able to do a stomp, it should be able to deal with those characters at the back of the board your opponent does not want you to get to. Let's take a look at our first core unit, and this is a mandatory unit that you need in your Beastman force. Gorherd is a lightly armoured infantry melee unit. The best equipment you can give them is a shield for a 6-up armor save, or if you'd like to get rid of any defense, you can upgrade to having an additional hand weapon. They can take a full command, and up to 1 unit and every 1,000 points can have the ambusher special rule. They also have the special rule as standard bestial charge, and on a turn in which they make a charge move over 3 inches, they're going to get +1 to their strength modifier. They start out base strength 3, so going up to base strength 4. They're also toughness 4 as well, so that's going to help them a tiny bit with their survivability. I think it's fair to say this is a cheap unit. This is a unit that is not going to survive particularly well. However, just looking at their base rules, you're going to be able to stack a lot of attacks for a core unit that you have to take. In the role of being a very cheap unit, they're a skirmishing unit, so you can obviously use them to screen out the front of your army. With a sergeant in the unit, they're only going to be leadership 7. However, as we've talked about already, they're going to be able to re-roll the panic, fear, and terror tests thanks to having the mark of chaos undivided. They have move through cover, they have the warband special rule, so you are going to be able to increase their leadership based on their rank bonus. And as skirmishers, they're going to be able to be fairly nimble, and thanks to being able to move through cover, they're not going to be affected by stuff that's going to slow them down. The other way, I think, to build a Gore unit is to have a lot of them. And, of course, they gain access to Primal Fury and also Blood Rage. This means with additional hand weapon and access to Frenzy, thanks to Primal Fury, you could have up to 3 attacks each on this unit. True, there won't be a lot of AP, and in ongoing combats, they are going to really suffer because their strength will drop down and they have no armor save, so they are just going to get beat up. Building a giant Gore brick is probably going to be a mistake. It's probably better off spending points on much more elite units. Next core unit we're going to look at are Ungor Herds. Primarily, they are a cheaper version of the Gore, and the stock come equipped with hand weapons and shields. You can upgrade them to either have thrusting spears or throwing spears, but I think what you'll most likely see people do is upgrade them to having short bows. Short bows are 18 inches at strength 3, and they have quick shot and also volley fire. This means half the models in the ranks behind the first are going to be able to shoot in addition to the front rank. Because this upgrade is free, and also 1 unit of Ungor Raiders for every 1,000 points in your army is going to be upgradable to having the Ambusher special rule. This is already a skirmishing unit that can move through cover. They can gain the bonuses that you can get from being a warband and also a horde. And if you want them to be a very cheap frontline unit, they also have the Chariot Runner special rule. This means chariots are going to be able to pass through them to complete charges. And seeing as you can take chariots as core units in this roster, this gives you a good opportunity to screen those chariots and make sure those chariots are going to be able to do their charges. You're not building an army around Ungor. However, Ungor are going to play a very pivotal role in your army in either being able to redirect enemy larger units or be units that can be able to ambush and cause some threats on flanks. The next unit we're going to look at are Chaos Warhounds. This is a cheap fragile war beast unit. They're really fast at movement 7, and you can upgrade them to have the Vanguard special rule. Our minimum unit of 5 with Vanguard is going to cost us 35 points. And this feels like exactly the right type of unit that you're going to put in the middle of your army to immediately start shutting down some of those larger and more aggressive cavalry charges that you might see at the beginning of the game. There's a cheeky little option to give them poison attacks as well if you wanted to, charge them into a monster early on and potentially ping off a couple of wounds. If you're looking to go really ham into this army, then you can take some Razorgor herds. Think of the Razorgor herd as like small chariots. They're only 52 points each, they're toughness 5, they've got 3 wounds each, and they've got some armoured hide, so they've got light armour. So their job is not to stick around in combat, instead they're to add to combat resolution. They have fear, so that's immediately going to cause an issue for the opponent. They have impact hits D3, 4 attacks base at strength 5, and their Razor Tusks are AP 1. They also have primal fury, and those attacks are also armour bane. Potentially larger units are interesting, however their survivability, I think, is going to be an issue. If you'd like to improve on the Razorgor herd and move up to a Tuskgor Chariot, it's going to fill exactly the same role. However, there is a little bit more survivability on one of these. They're only 85 points, and they're toughness 4 with 4 wounds with a 4-up armor save. So this might be a cute little unit to pin in enemy units, get a flank charge in so there's not that many attacks coming back into the unit, and it could really slow a unit down. Coupled to that, it's got D6 plus 1 impact hits and also first charge, so it's going to disrupt the enemy ranks, therefore they're not going to get a rank bonus. This is a unit you're going to use to add to combat resolution for a more aggressive combat block. But multiple Tuskgor Chariots could be hilarious to run around and cause loads of combat resolution. Moving on to special, and we're going to talk about an elite infantry unit called Bestigor. Bestigor are toughness 4 with 1 wound, and they have heavy armor. They come equipped with great weapons, and you can't change that out. Adding those great weapon attacks to their strength 4 is going to be very effective, and they even have the very respectable weapon skill 4. They have 1 attack each. However, obviously, they have access to primal fury. This means they're going to be re-rolling once to hit, and also if you roll any doubles, they're going to get the frenzy special rule, so they can get up to 2 attacks apiece. You can upgrade them to have a full command, and you can take a magic banner up to 50 points. Your unit champion can take 25 points worth of magic items and also chaos upgrades. And if you want, you can upgrade the unit to have the stubborn special rule and the veteran special rule. Because the unit is a warband, it's going to be able to add its rank bonus to its leadership. So I think stubborn is a really nice upgrade for this unit because this unit is probably going to stay locked in combat for a while. I can't picture your army playing very similar to some of the other armies that are going to fight in a block in the middle of the board. This feels like the first unit we've seen that might be able to actually hold the line. However, obviously, because of great weapons dropping your initiative down to 1, you're probably going to want to achieve charges with this unit. Thankfully, though, you've got a lot of your own units that are cheap that you're going to be able to put in the way of the enemy units, and then hopefully countercharge with this unit. The next rare unit we're looking at are Harpies. This is a skirmishing unit that can move through cover and has move 10. It's toughness 3 with absolutely no armor save and a wound apiece. However, they do have 2 attacks each. This again is one of those smaller units that you move up the flanks of the board, potentially either to get flank charges in to add to combat resolution. However, seeing as you already have access to lots of ambushing units, I'm not sure about this unit's utility. You can scout them as well. Scout's a very strong rule, especially if you get the first turn. Not because you can do a charge, because scouting units can't charge on the first turn, but because you're going to be able to move them behind the enemy lines very quickly. This is going to force units to potentially take leadership tests in order to march. Okay, it's time to get into the absolute beef of this army. And Minotaur herds are a monstrous infantry unit which are going to absolutely slap. Let's as always talk about the lack of survivability. 3 wounds each at toughness 4, and they can have light armor and a shield. However, if we want, obviously, we can make them ambushers. This is obviously going to help protect this unit from small arms fire like crossbows or handguns. You can have a full command, you can take your magic standard up to 50 points, and the champion in the unit can have up to 25 points of magic items and chaos upgrades. So let's talk about the melee output of this unit, because this is where the unit is going to really shine. As standard, they come with 3 attacks at strength 5 with a hand weapon. Thanks to having the foe render rule, this means those hand weapons can be at AP 2, and thanks to primal fury, they're going to be able to reroll ones to hit, potentially get frenzy. If they do get frenzy, thanks to blood rage, they're going to be able to have 2 attacks versus 1. So what we're looking at for each Minotaur is 5 attacks at strength 5, AP2, and rerolling ones to hit. This is on top of their impact hits, which are also going to be at AP1. And so when this unit charges, it is going to do a lot of melee damage. If you'd like to swap out from having the hand weapons and really push this unit up to be monster hunters, you can give them great weapons. You're still going to be able to generate that amount of attacks, but you're just going to be doing a higher strength profile. Add in a wizard to buff this unit up and a Doombull in the front ranks, and you have got an insane amount of combat potential. But as often the way with the Beastmen, it's the survivability that's going to be an issue. They get good leadership from being a warband, and thanks to the Mark of Chaos Undivided, re-roll their Panic, Fear, and Terror tests. I think a Minotaur herd popping up on the flank of any army is really going to change the shape of how the old world plays. Obviously, we've seen lots of Bretonnian armies with their long flanks available for some absolutely meaty charges. And I think this is what the Minotaur herds are going to be best at. Charging along the flank of an enemy and just rolling through their lines. I'd just like to express again, because I don't think I was excited enough. The output on this is amazing. It's great. Big, beefy cow monsters beating everything up. These are awesome. Mobility in this army is most likely coming from being able to ambush. However, you do have some faster units, and the next one we're going to talk about from the rare section are Centigor herds. At movement 8, they're a fast cavalry unit with swift stride, so they're definitely going to be able to pull off some early charges. Equipped with hand weapons and shields, you can't upgrade to have any better armor, but they are toughness 4, which I hope keeps them alive a little bit longer. They have 1 wound each, and they strike at initiative 2. This means the upgrade to great weapons feels like a no-brainer. Thanks to being drunken, they can potentially get extra attacks, and as a skirmish unit that can move through cover, they definitely are more mobile than some of the other units. You can have a full command, and 1 unit up to 1,000 points can have a magic standard up to 50 points. And then 1 unit per 1,000 points can also have the ambusher special rule. We already have cheaper units in this army that can screen out. We have harder hitting units which we can use to ambush with. This unit also has the obvious downside that occasionally it might be too drunk. So I'm not sure I'm that impressed by Centigor and if I'd take them to an event. However, if I was playing a game with my friends down the local club, I think Centigors would be a great inclusion because they'll have some great storytelling involved in their rules. The next rare unit we're going to look at are Dragon Ogres, and these guys are awesome. Don't forget, you can also include Dragon Ogres in a Warriors of Chaos army. Let's start off with their survivability. You can take these in units of 1 to 9. That is going to be important, we'll talk about that later. If we're looking at survivability of these units, each model has got 4 wounds each. They're toughness 4, and they come as standard with light armor. You can upgrade this to heavy armor, and they also have armored hide 2. This is going to give them an effective 3+ armor save. So 4 wounds each on a 3-up armor save at toughness 4 for 56 points is great. They come as standard equipped with hand weapons, and those are ensorcelled, so they're magical attacks, and they also AP 1. They have 3 attacks base. You can give them an additional hand weapon for +1 attack, give them great weapons or halberds. They already strike though at initiative 2. So, like the Centigor, I think giving them a great weapon isn't bad, especially because they're strength 5. They're equipped with armor bane 1, and so you could have 3 attacks per model, strength 7, AP 3. To add to that combat resolution, they also have 2 stomp attacks each. They cause fear in their enemy, and they're immune to psychology themselves. They also have the quickening storm special rule, which means if they're hit by the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth spell, the Storm Call, then they're going to get +1 to their initiative and also their attacks. This is going to pump them up to 4 attacks base. With that great weapon on the charge, we're still going to be swinging at initiative 5. So as a big unit, they're going to cause a lot of issue. Their front rank is going to be particularly aggressive. A unit of these 4 wide, it's going to be very difficult to punch through their high armor save and do enough damage that you're going to be able to clear them before they start swinging into your front rank. However, where this unit might be a real issue is when you take them in multiples of 1. 56 points really isn't a lot to be giving up in victory points to use these to move block enemy units. They're absolutely brilliant for hunting down chaff units, and they're going to be incredible for flank charges. So combined with other units of chaff in the army, you might be able to create clouds of chaff with these monsters just wading through. These are definitely competing with the Minotaurs in best in slot, and the survivability of these guys might make them even better. Our next unit is the Razorgor Chariots. Toughness 5 with 4 wounds, they have a 4-up armor save. These are a perfect unit to review after looking at the Dragon Ogres. These cost 120 points, so for each Razorgor Chariot you could get 2 Dragon Ogres. However, just taking Razorgor Chariots for what they are, they have D6 +2 impact hits, and they have the Razorgor with 4 attacks each at strength 5. They have first charge, so they can disrupt enemy rank bonuses the first time they do charge. And in many ways, these work exactly like you would expect all the Chariots to work. Chariots' jobs are to be part of a multi-charge to help with massive combat resolution. They are much worse if they get charged, but thanks to the Razorgor having its 4 high-strength attacks, these are a little bit better than some of the other chariots. The next rare unit is a Cockatrice. The Cockatrice is a deformed, mutated chicken. It's a monstrous creature that I would consider to be a light monster, but it has amazing output. Toughness 5 with heavy armor, it's only got 4 wounds. So, like the rest of the Beastmen roster, survivability is not its thing, however its output is awesome. 6 attacks at strength 4, at weapon skill 4, but at the high initiative 6. Doesn't have any AAP on its weapon, so it's not necessarily going into heavily armored targets. It's also got stomp attacks to add to its combat resolution in combat, but it's also a large target, so it's going to be much more susceptible to shooting. Bonuses though, it causes terror, and I think this is a great universal special rule and is going to cause loads of issues in your opponent's army. And if it does want to charge in, it is Swift Stride. However, as we look deeper into this unit, this is where it becomes very odd, because it's a hybrid unit. It also has a special rule Stony Stare, which is going to add to its combat resolution. Enemy models that start in base contact with the Cockatrice must pass an initiative test or suffer D3 strength 2 hits with no armor saves allowed. Looking at the shooting attack, it has a petrifying gaze. This is a range of 18 inches, and the Cockatrice's ballistic skill is 5. It's only strength 2. However, you swap the toughness for the initiative value of the target unit. It's a magical attack, so it's going to punch through ethereal, and it causes multiple wounds D3. You can upgrade the unit to have poison attacks, but I don't think that's overly worth it. And you can also take take the upgrade Acidic Vomit. Acidic Vomit is a breath weapon at strength 3 and AP 1. This is such an odd unit, ignoring the fact that it is a crazed chicken. It has a genuinely good stat line for combat, but it also has a very interesting missile weapon and also can be upgraded to having a breath weapon. Overall, this is one of those units where I need you in the comments to tell me exactly what I'm looking at, because I think this is too out there for me. Moving on to rare, we're going to look at the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth. I've been describing some monsters as light monsters, and the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth is exactly the opposite. Toughness 5 with 6 wounds. A standard comes with light armor, which you should upgrade to heavy armor, which is going to stack with its Armored Hide 2 for a 3-up armor save. 5 attacks, base at strength 6. It's also striking at initiative 4, which is quite quick. This does mean it's going to be interesting whether or not you're going to upgrade to just keeping the hand weapon, which is an ensorcelled weapon, which has got AP 1, and is going to mix really nicely with the Armor Bane 2. Add an additional hand weapon for another attack, or go for a great weapon, so you can be swinging at the monstrous strength 8. That strength 8 swing is going to be AP 2 with Armor Bane 2 potentially pushing it up to 4. You can upgrade a Dragon Ogre Shaggoth to have 50 points of Chaos Mutations and 50 points worth of magic items. That's not the end of its combat resolution though. It's also got D3 plus 1 stomp attacks, so this is going to just do a lot of work in melee. It's a large target, so it's going to be vulnerable to war machines and also small arms fire. It's immune to psychology, so you don't really have to worry about any of those issues, and it causes terror, which I think by this point you all know I think is great. And lastly, it has the bound spell Stormcall. Stormcall is a magic missile with a casting value of 7, and it's cast on the user, range self. If this bound spell is cast, all units within 6 inches of this model, friend or foe, including units engaged in combat and this model itself, suffer D3 strength 4 hits, each with an AP of 1. This is such an interesting mechanic, potentially taking damage. However, as we know, thanks to the quickening, the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth and any Dragon Ogres, if hit by this spell, are going to be +1 initiative and +1 attack. Only cast at power level 1. I think your opponents are going to be able to shut this down more than you would like. But on the turns in which it goes off, you are going to be doing a lot of extra damage with the Shaggoths and the Dragon Ogres. Overall, this is just an absolutely excellent monster, and also supports running lots of Dragon Ogres in your army. Competing in the rare slot for best monster, we have the Jabberslythe. The Jabberslythe is another monstrous melee creature. Toughness 5 with 5 wounds, it's only able to get heavy armor. It's a large target, so, as always, susceptible to missile weapons. Causes terror, and is movement 9 with fly and has got swift stride. This gives you some good long-range charge potential your opponent is going to have to really take seriously. In combat, it's got 5 attacks at strength 5 with an AP of 2. To add to the combat resolution, it's got D3 stomp attacks, and to help control the board, it has terror. It does have a couple of special rules though. Its main rule is Maddening Aura. During the command sub phase of its turn, enemy unit that's within 8 inches of this model, including units that are fleeing or that are engaged in combat, must take a leadership test. If the leadership test is failed, the unit suffers D3 strength 3 hits with no armor and no regeneration saves allowed. I do love the idea of taking a couple of Jabberslythes and trying to push them into the enemy army, and then just keep doing AoE damage to all of their units, especially because it's on such a large base. However, the 5 wounds with only a heavy armor save do give me pause to think how much sustain that tactic is going to have. If you do hit it though, you do suffer from the Spurting Blood special rule, with each wound that's lost causing a strength 4 hit at AP 1 to the unit that did it. And lastly, it does have a missile weapon, or missile tongue. The Slithy Tongue is a 12-inch shot at strength 5 and AP 1. I do love the potential of what this unit can do, but it's already part of a decked melee roster. The Cygor is another monster, but this monster instead is an artillery piece. Let's first look at its hurl attack profile. It's got a range between 12 and 36 inches. It uses the small 3-inch blast template. It's strength 8, AP 3 at the center of the hole, and it does multiple wounds D3 plus 1, and the rest of the template is strength 4 at AP 1. Unlike black powder weapons, if you roll a misfire on the artillery dice, then the model suffers a single wound. This is a really nice addition to the Beastmen roster, because a single Cygor can be chucking rocks from the back of the board, making your opponent have to run to you, and then while running to try to shut down the Cygor, they're going to get flank charged by all of the ambushing units. This isn't the only thing the Cygor does. Before we look at that, let's talk about its survivability. It's toughness 5 with 6 wounds, and it's only equipped with light armor. If it does get into combat, it's got 4 attacks, but it's only weapon skill 2. However, it does have a special rule that helps with this. The special rule Ghost Sight helps in the combat phase. You may reroll any failed to hits made against enemy wizards, enemy models or units equipped with magic items, or enemy models or units with a ward or regeneration save. So while you're only weapon skill 2, you're going to get to reroll against most of the elite units you're ever going to face. Those 4 attacks that you have are all going to be at strength 6. You also have D3 stomp attacks to help with that combat resolution. Also, the Cygor causes terror, is immune to psychology, and obviously a large target, and so cannons will be shooting at it while it's throwing stones at the cannon. Its other unique special rule is Soul Eater. If an enemy wizard wishes to cast a spell while within 12 inches of a Cygor, they've got to take a leadership test. If the test is failed, the wizard has lost their nerve, and if they should fail to cast the next spell because they haven't reached the casting value, the spell is miscast and they immediately roll on the miscast table. However, if the test is passed, then the wizard can carry on. This is a situational stipulation if you get close enough to a wizard. And so I don't think this is the main reason you would take a Cygor. You're taking the Cygor because you can chuck rocks. Our next monster is a Gorgon, and this is an absolute melee powerhouse. Let's talk about survivability straight off the bat. Toughness 6 with 6 wounds. It's got light armor and regeneration 6+. This isn't an overly survivable stat line, but I think toughness is going to be very good for helping keep this unit alive. However, it does have a way to recover wounds. The Swallow Whole special rule activates if the Gorgon is in combat with either regular or heavy infantry. That unit must immediately make an initiative test. If it fails, one model from that unit is slain and the Gorgon recovers a wound. And if it's passed, obviously nothing happens. So a little bit of sustain, you want to be getting this unit into combat, and you're not really going to get much of a choice because this unit is frenzied. This unit obviously causes terror, and once it gets into combat, it's got 5 attacks at strength 6. Its Cleaver Limbs attack is AP 2, with Killing Blow and Monster Slayer. This means any unsaved wounds that this model is able to put into a monster is going to auto-slay that monster. This is horrifically good and very rare and super unique. The Gorgon will be a particularly interesting model to have on your army list when you get to deployment, because if your opponent has any monsters, they're going to be continuously second-guessing where they should place it, because they do not want it facing off against a Gorgon. The Gorgon also has access to Primal Fury, with the opportunity to potentially reroll ones in combat, and Blood Greed for additional attacks in close combat. And lastly, to add to its combat resolution, it's got D3 stomp attacks. The Gorgon is expensive. It's also very, very effective once it's got into melee. As a large target with almost no armor save, I'm a little concerned for its survivability. However, that's pretty much true for most monsters that have a very low save. If your opponent doesn't bring the tools to deal with high toughness units, like great weapons or artillery pieces, then the Gorgon should be in a really great place. And that time when your Gorgon destroys a monster in melee, it's going to feel amazing. Our last monster from the rare section is the Chaos, the famous Chaos Giant. Let's talk about survivability first. Toughness 6 with 6 wounds. It's equipped with light armor. Causes terror. It's also a large target, so susceptible to war machines, light fire, the classic. Causes terror, which is a great rule, and it's unbreakable, so it's going to stick around in combat for a very long time. It's also immune to psychology, so there's nothing to worry about there. It's fairly fast at movement 6, but obviously strikes at a low initiative of 2. And when looking at combat resolution, it has D6 stomp attacks. However, the other attacks it makes are very, very unique. You can choose between 2 different weapon attacks. You can either choose giant attacks or the pick up and attacks. Let's look at the giant attacks first. The giant attacks are targeted at an enemy unit that the giant is engaged with. You roll a D6 and you consult the table. On a roll of a 1, you do an headbutt. The giant singles out a lone enemy. You nominate a single model in the fighting rank of an enemy unit. That model is hit and suffers D3+1 wounds with no armor or regeneration saves permitted. Ward saves can be attempted as normal. So no rolling to hit, no rolling to wound, just D3+1 wounds is crazy good. On a roll of a 2, you do a belly flop. Place a small 3-inch blast template so its central hole is directly over the center of the target unit. Any model, friend or foe, but not including this model, whose base lies underneath the template, risks being hit and suffers a single hit at the strength of the unit, which is strength 6, with an AP of 2. While situational and random, this has to be one of the most effective ways of dealing with a horde of models. On a roll of a 3 to 4, you do a mighty swing. You do D6+1 hits at strength 7 and AP 2. On a roll of a 5, you do thump with club. You nominate a single model in the frightened rank of the enemy unit. You have a single attack of strength 10, AP 4 with multiple wounds D6. And lastly, if you roll a 6, you get jump up and down. The target unit suffers D6+1 hits at strength 6 with no armor saves permitted, but you can still do ward and regeneration saves. Of course, the inconsistency of what a giant does means that you're very unlikely to take it in an event setting. However, this is one of the reasons I love the old world so much. This is a complex set of rules that you can use to engage with a unit. If you don't use the giant attacks ability, you can use the pick up and ability. This can only target units that are regular infantry or heavy infantry. Pick a target unit that the giant is engaged with, and they must pass an initiative test. If they fail, a victim is picked up by the giant and a model is removed from play. If the test is passed, then all the models duck out the way and no one is slain. Next, you roll a d6. On a roll of 1 to 3, the giant forgets what he's doing and the attack sequence ends. On a roll of a 4, the unit must take another initiative test. And if failed, one of the models is slain, and if passed, they duck out the way. This process continues until the giant forgets. This attack sequence continues until you roll the result where the giant forgets what he's doing. So even though you may not continuously slay models, you may keep swinging at your opponent. Again, this is not particularly good, but incredibly thematic. So that's the overview of the Beastmen roster. I think it's fair to say, in most cases, this feels like a fragile melee force. It does have the opportunity for some pretty good shooting, and some of its monsters are absolutely outrageous. The ambush mechanic feels particularly good, but I feel like you're going to commit pretty aggressively to it, and therefore your playstyle will orientate around it. However, the units that you can ambush are pretty varied. Many units in this roster feel like chaff units, and they're going to be particularly good for redirecting the enemy and slowing the enemy down. Lots of the other units feel particularly good at flank charging or helping do charges that are going to help with combat resolution. All the monsters are very varied and fairly unique. And then there's some very aggressive melee characters and big melee bricks. I think this is like the fourth of these overview videos I've made so far, and I think so far this is probably my favorite book. I'm not sure if it's the strongest book or it's the most effective book, but it has so many amazing rules that interact with each other. I love Primal Fury that generates Frenzy, that adds for extra attacks. I like the Ambush and the Frenzy comboed together. That's very, very interesting. And I think if I was trying to pick up an army that I was having the most fun with my friends or at clubs or things like that, then the Beast of Chaos roster seems like the most varied and the most engaging that I've done so far. Of course, I'd love to know what you think. It's been incredible the reception these videos have received, and I felt very overwhelmed, and it's been awesome. And I do read almost every single comment, so please do leave comments about what you think about the army, units you like, combos that you're expecting to see, or just fun that you're going to do with this army. We will, of course, eventually be doing a deeper tactical dive. We'll be talking about the magic items, how to put lists together, and much, much more. And I want to thank everyone in our amazing Discord community on the Squarebase Patreon. Anyway, thanks again for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again soon.